A few days ago, I told my mother-in-law that I'd bring her grandkids, our gorgeous twins, 5 years old, to her house for dinner. It was a gesture of good faith, as she and Phil had babysat for an entire weekend while hubby and I took some time to ourselves. Mill decided to make that dinner a grand occasion and invited the entire family over. Fine with me, the more the merrier. Except half an hour after we arrive, Jo walks in. The entirety of her back out, titties popping and all. Now, Jo is my husband's ex-girlfriend, who also happens to be a favorite of Mill and a long-time friend of hubby's family. I don't know why they didn't work out. Frankly, I don't care. Long story short, Jo does what she always does at these functions: touch my husband inappropriately, whisper in his ear, try to eat off his plate act. She went as far as to try and steal my seat next to him at the dinner table. Luckily my Sil, a literal saint, was able to stop her. Hubby is generally okay with putting his foot down. If she does anything truly egregious, he does put a stop to it, but to him, her touchy behavior and the way she tends to hover around him and try to get his attention don't fall in that category. I told myself to ignore her and not let her get to me, but she pulled me aside later that evening and said absolutely horrible things to me, telling me that it was only a matter of time before my husband left me and that he was using me as a breeding plant, etc. Fun fact, I am currently pregnant again, and at that point, I'd had enough. So I dumped my drink on her and walked away. Jo absolutely lost it and walked out the house. Hubby's extended family generally has a good opinion of me, so no one thinks I did it on purpose. I did, and I'd do it again, but my husband knows better. He pulled me to the side to confront me about it, and was surprisingly angry. Did I make a bit of a scene? Sure, but his anger wasn't proportional to that at all. If you can't tell, hubby is the type of person that doesn't like to make a scene, especially around his family. I have complained about his proximity to Jo multiple times before all this went down. I've asked him to cut contact with her and basically just ignore her presence, and he's refused on the basis that she's a family friend. Basically, he thought I was overreacting every time I'd bring her up. But I'm tired of being the bigger person. Why should I have to watch her throw herself at him and rise above? No. That wench got what was coming to her and my actions were long overdue. We argued back and forth about it for a while before I eventually revealed what she had said to me at the dinner. He understood my anger at that point, but I don't think it should have even gotten that far for him to understand why I don't want her around. The fact that he'd trust the character of an ex, over his wife of 10 plus years and the mother of his children, is baffling and incredibly hurtful. I explained this to him and he adamantly disagrees and gives excuses, so now we're here. Hubby thinks I should have brought up what she said from the beginning. To me, this issue isn't what she said in and of itself, but her behavior as a whole. As a disclaimer, I know my husband is not cheating on me with this woman. We spend every waking second either together, or with the kids. He wouldn't have time to. I trust him completely as well. It just bothers me how comfortable and desperate that woman is. Mill loves her and Jo can do no wrong in her eyes, so I suppose that's where she gets the confidence from. That aside, I don't understand why he allows her to come near him in the first place. Ida? Edit. No, I was not drinking while pregnant. I have not told my husband's family that I am pregnant as we haven't passed the first trimester yet. Hubby had gotten me juice in a wine glass, but because no one the narrative became that I threw wine. Edit 2. Gotten a couple people asking how taking the kids to dinner is a reward for Mill. She had been asking us to come around for dinner for a while and is always asking for an excuse to see our kids. We don't live very close by anymore, so in-person visits are rare nowadays. She also really enjoys cooking for everyone and would do weekly dinners when hubby and I still lived in her area. My husband's family is Italian, if that gives any idea. Update 1. I'm desperate for advice/ways to fix this once and for all, if you have any. There is a bit of backstory to this situation. A lot of it is covered in a previous post of mine to this sub. Although I think that post is quite funny as I read it back, I'll sum it up if you don't feel like going back to read. For context, both hubby and I have been married for about a decade. I am currently pregnant with our third kid, my last pregnancy yielding 2 gorgeous girls that I absolutely adore. Now the brief summary: a month and change ago, hubby and I took the kids to his mom's house for a family dinner. This happens every so often, and every single time, hubby's ex, Jo, is invited by Mill. And every single time, without fail, she crosses boundaries with my husband that I'm sure would ring code red alarm bells in any other person's head. Hubby does not fully entertain her advances, but he doesn't suppress them fully either. At least, not in the way I think he should. In private, Jo is extremely catty towards me. It's as if her entire vibe is copy and pasted from Mean Girls. But her and Mill get along great, and the rest of the family likes her as well. I've been dealing with this on the chin for some time, but at that last gathering, I snapped and accidentally tipped my wine glass over her inappropriate dress after she said incredibly cruel things to me. Hubby got mad at me for making a scene in front of his family and we left shortly after. Summary over. I ended up showing hubby the comments and PMs I got from my post a couple days after, which were largely against him. I didn't anticipate it swaying his opinion much, and it didn't. In fact, it made the situation worse. He didn't like the overwhelming majority of comments claiming that he liked the attention, and thought I embellished details about Joanna's behavior in the post. I did not, and in many cases, I downplayed just how crazy some of her actions are. I asked him if his mom even liked me and he didn't even respond to the question. He looked at me and we sat in silence for a full fucking minute. Many people under my previous post said I was crazy if I thought Mill would invite hubby's ex to dinner with his wife and kids there, as a show of respect and goodwill. Call me crazy, but I bought into the whole she's a family friend crap and continually let it slide. I cried nonstop for days after our conversation. Maybe I'm an idiot and I should have seen the signs, but I genuinely thought me and my Mill had a decent relationship, especially now that I have the twins. There was some stuff that happened early on in hubby and I's relationship that caused some discord, but I thought we had moved past it all. Clearly not. I think it's much more likely that she likes her grandkids and just tolerates the vesicle that produced them. Hubby and I stood at somewhat of an impasse for a week after. I'm very loving by nature, but I've just about had it with this situation, so I was irritable, quiet, just a complete 180 from my usual self. We talked again and he said he'd try to be more assertive with Joe. I told him there'd be no need, since I had no plans on going to his mother's house anymore. Me not going means the twins can't either, since he can't very well be expected to entertain his family and look after the children he helped create. Note the sarcasm. Though that does work in my favor, since Mill loves the twins and he apparently cannot stand to disappoint her. The impasse continued. I've had a few complications with my pregnancy since then. Baby and I are okay, nothing too worrisome, and there's been so many other things happening in our lives that the frigid air between us has slowly started to melt. We have not resolved the situation at all, just glossed over it in favor of more pressing matters. I really do need him right now, and I'm not necessarily mad that things are starting to go back to normal. I just know that it's going to become a thing the next time his mom throws an event. I will convince myself that this time around will be fine. And it won't, because it is never fine. But I'm unsure how to bring up the issue again without seeming like I'm dragging up the past. It truly does drive me crazy, even more so now that I realize Mill's kindness isn't fully genuine. Is there any advice on bringing this up carefully? On resolving this issue once and for all? I'm at my wit's end because I adore this man in every other aspect, but I can't keep putting up with this. Update 2. DH and I met in college. At the time, he and his on-again off-again ex had broken up, so I asked him out. If I'd known back then what I know now, I'm not sure I would have bothered. 2 years into our relationship, I still hadn't met his parents. He hadn't met mine because my family is a disaster, an entirely different story, but from what I could tell, his parents seemed fine. When I asked why I hadn't met them, he joked that his mom didn't like me because of his ex. I can't recall his specific words, but that was the general idea. Anyway, I treated it like a joke because he did. As time progressed, it felt less and less like a joke and more like the startling truth. I finally got to meet Mill and Phil a few more months down the line, and the welcome? Underwhelming to say the least. But I figured it was just me having weird expectations. His family's Italian, so I'd done a little, crappy, research on what to expect, in addition to asking him about his family. I thought they'd be a little warmer, but they were not downright rude to me, so it was still a win in my book. As time passes, I tried to warm up to Mill, but nothing worked. Her indifference slowly turned into thinly veiled disdain. For one of Phil's birthdays, I got him a handmade, expensive as fuck. I still think about that goddamn wallet. It enrages me, Italian leather wallet with DH's boyfriend at the time approval. Turns out Italians have a superstition against gifting empty wallets, which made the gift a bit awkward. But Phil didn't make a big deal and even gave me a coin to turn it into a purchase instead of a gift. We laughed, and I thought things were fine until I found the wallet tucked away in my DH's apartment a month later. I find out from him that Mill apparently said she got Phil a better one, so mine wasn't needed anymore. When that happened and why no one bothered to tell me, I don't know. Oh, and Phil fell ill shortly afterwards, which I'm pretty sure she blamed on me too. Mill speaks fluent English, but for the first couple months of knowing her, I was led to believe she only spoke Italian. Because that's all she would speak around me. Granted, I could have asked DH about her level of English, but it didn't occur to me. I assumed one would speak English, around company that didn't speak their native language, if they had the ability to. Imagine my shock hearing him speak fluent English for the first time, not to me, can't remember the context, but still, what the fuck? And don't get me started on wedding planning. An absolute nightmare. Mill nitpicked everything. We had a smaller budget, largely due to me, and she made sure I felt lesser for it. She had mentioned wanting to be involved and she and Phil were footing most of the costs, so I said yes. My bridesmaids helped deal with her, but eventually, I cut her out of the planning entirely because having her around was starting to suck the life out of me. She also made a big deal about my parents not attending or paying for a portion of the wedding. My family and I were completely estranged at the time and she didn't quite seem to like that either. She'd rant in Italian, and while I didn't understand much, I knew she was shit-talking me. Oh, and she's a classic mama's boy enabler. They infantilized DH growing up, and there was a time where we couldn't buy groceries without her input. He's her golden boy. I've heard her refer to him as her miracle child. She has not had difficulty conceiving that I know of, but he is the only boy she gave birth to. When friction would rise between Mill and I, He'd try to keep the peace but still took her side in many situations. He only stood firm when she insulted my upbringing or tried to make me feel unworthy of marrying DH. Both things I appreciated immensely because those are sore subjects, but I wish he'd done more at times. He isn't blameless in this either, but this post isn't really about him. Suffice to say, I have many a story of how shitty and cold Mill would be towards me. But then I got pregnant and her attitude did a complete 180. Suddenly, she was offering to babysit, cook meals, knit clothes, etc. She even kissed me on both cheeks when she came to see us after labor. This woman had never voluntarily touched me before this point, I don't think. We started cooking together, and she taught me family recipes and some niche Italian phrases commonly used in the village their family is from. Dare I say, we bonded. I thought we'd finally gotten past whatever the initial problem was. Maybe having kids with her son was enough to prove that I was here to stay, so she decided to warm up to me. I don't know. I had no close maternal figures in my life, NC with my narcissistic mom since college and hardly any contact with my grandmother, so this felt incredibly cathartic. I wasn't racing to tell her my secrets or confide in her, but toying with the idea that we might be able to build up to that point made me happy. I had postpartum depression after the twins, and having her around to help was a godsend. I was hesitant at first, but she proved herself to be beyond trustworthy, and my husband and I were absolutely exhausted. I love my gorgeous girls, but 2 kids at once made me the bitchiest I've ever been. My stress levels were through the roof between feeding, nursing, changing, burping, soothing, etc. My husband was equally exhausted, and just when we would feel hopeless, Mill would offer to come over, let us sleep, eat, go out, just do whatever we needed to recharge. We would talk. Usually about the kids, but I just felt excited that she wanted to hold conversation with me. In the past, she hadn't bothered. If she called, it was her son's phone, and they'd speak, and then she'd hang up. But suddenly she was asking to speak to me as well. There was something extremely validating about it all, and I was happy to put the past to bed in favor for this new change. But recently, through a situation that is related but not the focus of this post, I realized she never respected me or my relationship with her son. For the past decade, Mill has been inviting my husband's ex to family gatherings and turning a blind eye to her blatant advances on him. She was introduced as a family friend, so I thought nothing of it initially. Plus, as Mill's and I's relationship improved, I assumed any malice she showed toward me would naturally fade. She had been inviting husband's ex to family events prior to me giving birth, and continued to do so well after. I don't know why, but I made the dumb assumption that because it continued, it couldn't have been in bad taste. We had gotten past our bad blood, after all, so if she was still inviting DH's ex, it couldn't have been with bad intent. Or so went my idiotic logic. But after posting about my situation, I realized that I was so horribly naive about everything. Then, a few weeks ago, I came across a post of a man disparaging his mom for treating her dill like shit and then switching up when she gave birth to her grandchildren. And then it clicked. That is exactly what happened to me. Mill's kindness truly may never have been genuine towards me. Rather, her love for her grandchildren outweighed any disdain she held towards me. She wasn't warming up to me at all, she was tolerating my presence to have access to my kids. Reddit really is an eye-opening place. Needless to say, I feel absolutely crushed. Everything else aside, I truly thought my Mill was in my corner. The past 5 years felt so healing because of our relationship. I've never had a sustained, genuine relationship with an older woman before this, and finding out it was all fake is numbing in ways I can't explain. I feel so fucking stupid, which is saying quite a bit considering I didn't think feeling like more of an idiot was possible for me right now. I just wonder how starved for attention I must be to have missed such clear signs. Grieving a relationship that only existed on my end is fucking hard, and coming to terms with my own lack of awareness and disillusionment has been a battle, among several others, that I just feel like I'm fucking losing. I feel a bit pathetic, all things considered. Because how did I not realize? And now all these thoughts flood my mind of what she's been telling my children when she's with them, whether or not extended family is in on it as well. I've been a mess. God, I feel sick. There's certainly many layers to this situation, but this one hurts much more than I thought it would. Now on to second story. Husband vanished into early mornings, sparking my friend's cheating theories, so I stalked his phone and shattered his trust over breakfast. Me, 34F, and my husband, 35 male, have been married 5 years and together for 9. From the start, I totally felt like I won the boyfriend, husband lottery cause he's definitely out of my league. He's handsome, very fit and athletic, wrestling and boxing and jiu-jitsu, and super charming. I see the way women look at him and I am very aware of how attractive he is. My husband has never given me any reason to think he has been unfaithful. He's wonderful provider and father to our 2-year-old son. However, about 6 weeks, there was a change in his routine that made me suspicious. My husband is an engineer, doesn't work crazy long hours but does bring work home usually. I work part-time from home, 2 or 3 days a week, and we have a spare bedroom that my husband made into a beautiful office. Usually when my husband comes from work, I am done working by the time he comes home. He usually eats something and then finishes up some work, or he goes and works out. However, I do admit kinda pestering him for things while he is working or exercising. If he can reach something for me, move a box, take the trash out. Or our son wants to see him and play or be read to. I admit that it is probably very distracting, but he never has indicated to me that it bothered him. So about 6 weeks ago, my husband started to leave for work very early. He always woke up first, made breakfast and coffee, fed our son. And then he would leave when I would wake up. But lately, he would leave for work about an hour earlier, he would make coffee still but would leave before our son got up. My stupid friends told me he was probably cheating. So they convinced me to sneak into his phone. I looked at his phone while he was in the shower, he doesn't keep it locked, I found nothing, no texts or phone calls. But I did share the location of his phone to mine. Next morning, he leaves early as usual, and I track his phone. Turns out he was going to a hotel. I am livid, I ask my neighbor to watch our son for me and head to the hotel to try and confront him. When I get to parking lot, I can kind of see on my phone that he is on direction of this little restaurant associated with the hotel. It was a little diner and that's where I found my husband. He was in a booth, by himself with his laptop doing work and having break, fast. My husband spots me and asks what I am doing there. I felt so relieved and told my husband my suspicions and what my friends told me. My husband hates my friends. I saw how disappointed he looked. He didn't say much to me except I can't believe you thought I would do that and that you would trust your dumbass friend over me. He ended up going to work and I went home and tried to be the best wife ever. I even made dinner for him, which I never do cause he is a way better cook. I don't know what to do though. My husband has been very distant last few days and slept in the guest room past 3 nights, which totally broke me. And today I found out, my husband will not come home today, he's staying with a friend. Update 1. I just heard from my husband through text. He changed his mind, said he will come home tonight, thank God. He said the part he was upset about the most was that I told my friend about the issue instead of talking to him. I kinda know how much this would bother him because he always makes comments about how much he dislikes when people talk about their spouses negatively. So, Reddit, I am going to apologize profusely, I know I messed up. But I need to save this. He's coming home in a few hours. He says he doesn't have to do any work when he comes home, yay. I am not really sure how to approach it. Do I let him talk to me? Do I just apologize and tell him I was worried about losing him? I'm not sure what to do about my friends. I've known these girls since elementary school and we are doing a girls' trip to Nashville in like a month. I haven't told them what happened, but I haven't been really in the mood to talk on the group texts. But for some context, yes, I am the only one out of all them who is married. Update 2. I was rehearsing all day what I wanted to say to him, but when he come home, I just broke down. I cried and my husband just hugged me. He told me that we can talk later after we put our boy to bed. After our son went to sleep, that's when we talked. To be fair to my husband, he was telling me the night before that he was leaving early for work and was really only doing that if I wasn't working the next day. I apologized every other sentence, but I asked him what I could do to make things easier on him, how I could help. If he feels safe at that diner, how could I do that at home? So I told him that I was going to start waking up with him in the morning. I can get our son up and dressed and get both him and my husband fed. I told him he can even work in the morning and I will stay out of the way too. I think he really appreciated the cause. He kinda choked up and said that would be really nice. We slept together too. As for my friends, there is a backstory there. My husband didn't say never to talk or see them, but I am not going on the trip and I am going to definitely distance myself from them. Update 3. I woke up with my husband and my son. Lazy Sunday feeling, smile, both of my boys at the kitchen table while I made breakfast and fed them both. All of a sudden I'm just hyper aware of everything in the moment, my husband and son being silly, my husband tickling me and pranking me, my son and my husband chasing me around the kitchen. I just about peed my pants when my husband yelled, "Get mom." And they both started to chase me around the kitchen. I know it won't be like this every day, but for the first time, I was very aware of how much power I have to make my home that safe and happy place. A lot of people were messaging me about my friends. I haven't spoken to them since everything happened, and quite frankly, I'm terrified of anyone finding out what happened. But when me and my husband first started dating, they talked very badly about him, and some of what they said made it back to my husband from a mutual friend. He had always stayed cordial with them, but there was one day, years ago, my friends were over for wine at my home. My friend was in the middle of a story and my husband had just walked in the house from work. She said, "Can you go somewhere else? I'm telling a story." And she basically yelled that at him. She can be obnoxiously loud. My husband absolutely flips out on her. He walked right up to her, got in her face and yelled, "Who the fuck do you think you are? You are in my fucking house. You go somewhere else." My husband had raised his voice at me like once ever, so I was in shock to see my husband do that. Wine night was over to say the least, haha. But ever since that moment, my husband was very openly hostile towards my friends. Reflecting on everything that's kinda happened, I feel very ashamed. I think I dodged a huge bullet and I hate how I have been acting, contributing so little to our marriage. Amazing how a mundane Sunday morning can at the same time be the best thing ever. My husband forgave me, I just now need to try and forgive myself.